Hello, everyone who's watching this later or might even join us in the chat like they did last time. This is the Land of Confusion show where we talk to Ricochet members. And today we're talking to Omega Paladin, who's been with us once before, back with my previous co-host, Don. And he is Ricochet's favorite mad scientist. And that's one reason why I chose The Curse of Omega Paladin as our title today.
Well, that's accurate. Yep. I hope that I'm Ricochet's favorite mad scientist. I mean, someone's got to step up after our previous the host of Saturday Night Science left.
Yes. So Flicker is just asking you what you do for a living in real life.
Well, I don't want to get too specific for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. I work with a bunch of laboratories and at an academic institution, and I help them do their research safely. So that can involve some biomedical questions, biological safety questions. There's also questions of chemical safety. I was helping clean out a lab that had been abandoned and finding old and interesting chemicals there. Or radiation questions. I will be helping out tomorrow with a radiation clean out. I've always been interested in radiation safety, even though I don't have a lot of specific training there. But that's been something I've been interested in since a child. And yeah, I help out with a lot of different safety aspects associated with laboratories and research. But I've done a bunch of things before that. So my background includes chemistry teaching. I have a master's degree in chemistry, so I actually can teach chemistry up to around like organic level. I've been a tutor and taught for that. So
okay.
I'm one of the few people who actually liked organic chemistry. You know, it like terrifies you.
Is there some sort of controversy with?
No, it's more like if you're in a science major and you're dealing with you're going to run into lots of pre-meds, and pre-meds are constantly talking about how they're dreading organic chemistry. I didn't mind it. I got A's in all my organic chemistry classes, and I help tutor people. It seems to make sense to me. But a lot of people just run screaming in terror from organic chemistry.
Did you write once a post or a comment where you, let me ask you this. Are you aware of all the various warning signs, the industrial warning signs, and what they mean and how you...
Yes.
All that. Did you write a comment about that once?
Yes.
Okay, now I know. All right.
I actually was on a committee that was trying to work this out. I hate being on that committee because half of it is... it's very simple to design a sign that complies with regulations. The tough part is dealing with marketing rules and branding. Forget that. I hate that. But if you want to deal with making a sign, there's different levels. Highest level is danger, which means if you mess with this, it's going to probably kill you. Warning is there's a pretty good chance it could kill you. And caution means this could injure you, probably wouldn't kill you, but still don't mess with it. And then notice sign just means, hey, pay attention.
Sounds like you could put like a comic together based on like some of my ex-girlfriends that would show each level of what anger or something like that.
I actually saw a girl's T-shirt that had the NFPA 704 fire diamond. You might have seen that. It's the multicolored diamond that has each section of the diamond is different color. Like it has a red section, a yellow section, and a blue section and a white section on it. You might see it on like trucks and such. But hazard communication is something I've always had interested in since I got into safety, because I actually massively screwed up a situation because I thought that something was a lot less hazardous than it was. I got a very severe skin burn from a chemical. I confused the term irritant with vesicant.
Okay.
Vesicant means it will cause blisters. It's related to chemical warfare agents. It's going to do like serious damage to your skin.
Mm-hmm.
Irritant just means, well, keep it out of your eyes, and it might make your skin itch.
I once mixed 5 gallons of concrete by hand. And
ooh,
yeah, what is that? Is that an irritant?
That contains calcium oxide as well as some calcium hydroxide, which are very caustic, similar but not as strong as Drano.
Ah.
Yeah.
So you might have noticed your hands feeling slippery. That's because the oils in your skin are being turned into soap.
Oh.
Yeah. Actually, my hands peeled for a week.
Yeah, I'll do that too.
But that was a long time ago. I haven't done it since.
Yeah.
Yeah, not recommended.
So we were just talking about the American election system and how some people are worried it's going to be going badly in 2022. Are you worried about that at all?
I'm worried. I don't think it's to the point where we should just go move to a bunker in Idaho and not vote and assume that we're all doomed and the Democrats are going to run rampant over the United States for all eternity or something like that. I think it's a problem and it needs to be addressed. I think one of the ways you can tell it's a problem is that no one is working to fix it. Everyone is conveniently ignoring issues and just trying to minimize them. That's never a good sign. It usually leads up to a big accident when you have that kind of thing going on in a industrial plant.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. We can just increase the temperature a bit, and we'll get the reaction done faster. Yes, you have the reaction done in instead of in an hour, you have it done in 1 second. The only problem is you now have a flaming mushroom cloud over your plant. So, I'm worried about it. I'm not panicking, but I think it's a big problem, and we could fix this. I had a Scantron scanner. This thing was incredibly straightforward and easy to use. It had to have been from the 80s, back when I was teaching. So we're talking like a 20-year plus gap from when this thing was first manufactured. This is old tech. It doesn't store data. It just prints it out directly. And you can just run things through an optical scanner. It will scan the data in and record it. You can make these things very safe by making them as simple as possible and as dumb as possible. The way you can tell if someone understands information security is how stupid their house is. No smart home for me. I have one smart thermostat, which I got because that was what came with the house. And I rent an apartment and I couldn't really change it. But it's not connected to anything because it doesn't have my Wi-Fi password. So it's just a fancier looking normal thermostat. Other than that, I don't have any smart home things or like Ring or any of those. very or simply safe or any of the other things they regularly advertise on the podcasts. If we have our electoral system, we want to make it as dumb and simple as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that way it is fault tolerant. And the faults will be obvious because, you're less likely to accidentally record a bunch of votes wrong. You're more likely to just have the thing start beeping annoyingly at you like an old school computer would do.
Do you think?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
I'll say I can say in Canada we do have. That's exactly how our municipal elections are run. The provincial election in Ontario had a tabulator, so you could hand recount if needed. But all it did was just count ballots fast. And federally, we did have mail-in ballots this time around, but we have this thing called photo ID. So if you want to mail in your ballot, you have to send in a copy of your driver's license or your national identity card.
The idea that photo ID is a discriminatory voter suppression mechanism is by far one of the most racist and outright insanely bigoted things I have ever heard. I see people of all
really
colors.
Racist countries.
But to be fair, blacks don't know how to access a computer. That was sarcasm.
Yeah, like all the people I used to work with when I was at the South Side, all of them, wearing their IDs every day at work. Every one of them having a photo ID with them. All the people I saw using photo IDs to, purchase alcohol or to purchase tobacco or to purchase decongestants. It's harder to buy Sudafed than it is to vote.
Yeah.
They don't even sell Sudafed anymore, do they? I think it's
actually they do. You have to go and get it from behind the counter because they're trying to keep people from cooking meth.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that for 5 or 10 years now, I've been using an analog or something to Sudafed that.
I don't like it. The analog that they have is the phenylephrine does not work for me. It supposedly does a similar thing, but Sudafed is one of the only ones that work, and it also is the only one you can get in the extended release form. So if you want, say, a 12-hour thing so you can take a pill in the morning and you'll be good until you get home, you got to go with Sudafed. And those are only available if you ask from behind the counter.
Oh, I'll have to try that. I guess you have to show your ID to get Sudafed, eh?
Show your ID, and then you have to sign a logbook or something similar. Sometimes it's computerized. But they have a very detailed system, which, as I said, is more secure than what we use to vote for our politicians.
Do you think that electronics is at all acceptable? I'll just say I don't think that any electronics is acceptable. Hand counts, blue thumbs, and number 2 pencils sounds good to me.
I look at it this way. I used a system that had a Scantron when I was teaching. That thing is very easy to use. You put in a key. You could even have the key encoded, and all it does is count. It uses a simple optical reader that counts what is in what square. It's not connected to any internet. It's not. It doesn't store things. It might copy it onto a paper sheet, but after you unplug it, it will. It basically is plugged in. It stores a little bit of information, and you can easily run it with a test ballot and let people see what you're doing beforehand, so that you can verify that it's counting correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing I like about it. You can't change anything. If you wanted to, you could actually you could actually encode it so that it can't accept any other key. And the key is entered when you you could enter in something so it's hard coded and such. It shouldn't be that hard to design an optical counting system. This is the kind of thing we use for scantrons, and the only real benefit it gives is that it lets you count things very rapidly. Now, you would all still have the paper ballot. There would be paper ballots. They would just be scanned through an electronic machine to rapidly scan them. And then they have those things available for a hand count afterward. I see nothing wrong with a purple thumb or something similar. That's great. As long as I would say the more we make it simple, the less room there is for error, and there's less room for fraud, and it's more tolerant of faults.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have I was an election judge, and when they were doing a process, I ended up causing a problem which probably resulted in a recount because I tripped on a cord. Because it was stored electronically, and it used like a electronic system. There was no option which you could have had with a paper counter to reset and then just feed all the ballots in again.
Yeah.
And you can have the ballots and have people put them in there, and any system that you use to report it should be open source. And it should be a copy of the source code should be available to poll watchers from all involved parties.
Right.
And I'm not talking about the software on the election ballot machines. I don't think there should be any software there. I'm talking about the software that you use to make the report that you show on the Board of Election webpage, because I'm assuming that you're going to use a computer at some point for that, just so you can show the number of ballots for each person.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to keep it simple. The KISS principle is part of safety. It's part of computer coding. It's just everything in my life it keeps on coming back to the KISS principle. You're familiar with the KISS principle, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Oh, I thought that was a rock thing. Oh, I got it. Now I can. Okay, now I understand.
Yes. I was not referring to having all of the election watchers wearing kabuki makeup and in goth costumes, and not that KISS principle. That could be pretty fun.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting, though. I mean, like it certainly would make I could see Lick It Up being played while sending out the mail-in ballots.
Yeah. So, yeah, what actually worries me the most is not so much the election as something that could happen before the election. I don't think our infrastructure system is doing very good right now. And things will get bad if we don't have supplies of infrastructure, because so much of our business model in the U.S. is based on Lean Six Sigma and trying to get everything just in time ordered. I mean, it's like as you use the idea is that as you use the last staple or you use the last jug of milk, you're just then getting the new container of milk
Right.
to replace it.
But that makes it 10 times more complicated to have everybody show up just in the nick of time. I've never understood that.
The issue is that if you have stock on hand, that's not generating you money.
Right.
And it's compromising your liquidity, or it's taking some. I understand that, but dang, you know.
Well, have you heard the fact that weather people thinking we're going to have another polar vortex in North America this year?
Oh, that should be fun.
Combined with the fact that we're rapidly approaching a critical, it's already happening, but a critical logistics shortfall that should be hitting us all at the perfect moment at Christmas.
Oh. You know, I recall we had it wasn't that long ago that we had really inexpensive energy so that we could deal with a situation like this. I'm about the most devout fan of nuclear energy, but if you want home heating, natural gas is the way to go. Correct. It is more efficient than electric heating by far, and it's very simple. It doesn't involve a lot of points of failure. And it's normally pretty easy to deliver. But if you don't build pipelines, if you don't support energy infrastructure, then it becomes in short supply and it gets to be very expensive.
Right.
And we have moved our economy to rely a lot on natural gas because we were used to fracking making natural gas really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So
when you refer to infrastructure, you were concerned about infrastructure being compromised prior to the election. Are you talking about energy infrastructure or communications or
energy and transportation currently?
Yeah.
Communication infrastructure, I don't think it's as hardened as it should be. Well, let me put it this way. If you said, if I was commissioned by the Democrats and I was told, you're going to need to spend this buku huge thing of infrastructure money and create lots of jobs while doing it, I could come up with lots of things that we could spend money on that would produce a net benefit. You know, we have lots of roads and bridges, especially, that are in disrepair. There's a bridge in Illinois near one of my friends lives. That there's like an advertisement put up by some engineers who inspected it, who say, don't drive over this bridge. It's near the point of failure.
Mm-hmm.
And it has not been fixed.
Are people still driving over it?
What?
Are people still driving over it?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Well, my friend, and I always make the point, like, let me know which bridge this is. So if I go down to visit you, I don't drive over it.
Right.
Because I'm a safety professional. That means that I can already imagine seeing the section in funny political memes about safety professional and safety professional ends up dead after disregarding safety notice. That's why I always make sure to put on my seatbelt and such, because I know I don't want to get made fun of all over the internet after I'm dead. So
posthumously.
Now, our communication infrastructure has a bunch of problems in that it's not hardened to deal with EMP or a major electromagnetic storm. You know, like a solar flare, something like the Carrington event.
Oh, I dream about the Carrington event. What about our oceanic cables? Are they as fragile as I used to read about them being? I would say fragile to disruption, deliberate disruption.
Uh, I would imagine they are fairly fragile to deliberate disruption. Uh, I don't have a lot of specialized knowledge there to be able to say for sure. Like, I mean, I imagine it's pretty easy to deliberately destroy things. If you want to deliberately, you know, you could do a lot of damage to anything if you let some guy into it who wants mischief.
With a hammer.
You know, so, but yeah, that's what I'm worried about is just infrastructure collapse.
Yeah. It was like, I don't think it will be total collapse, but it's going to be so strained this winter, and it's already starting to happen, but it's going to be so bad because they've made this idea that you could shut down and decide what is essential and non-essential businesses. And I worked logistics for 20 years. And when I heard that, I'm like, we're fucked. And sorry, I broke the cardinal rule on Ricochet, but yeah, it's going to be bad. It's going to be really bad. They shut down like the auto parts manufacturers for trucks at different times. So we don't have, at least 1/3 of the fleet is already like, is either offline or not able to move. And so many things in our countries move by truck.
And here's a fun thing. You know how we have so many trucks parked off the shore of California? AB5, which keeps on coming back again, banned owner-operator truckers.
Oh, wow.
They do a lot of the hauling from these ports.
Mm-hmm.
You also have vaccine mandates, which, you have people who are now being asked to choose between getting a medical procedure that they don't want and losing their job. I got all my shots before as soon as I could, and I recommend the vaccine to people, but I would never force someone to get it.
Right.
That's just wrong. But anyway, you're forcing all these. You're putting up extra constraints and trying to discourage people from becoming truckers.
Yeah.
And we need lots and lots of truckers right now, and we're going to need them more and more as more truckers retire.
Yeah. And especially 5 years ago, the United States and Canada reduced the hours allowed to drive your truck. So that meant it went from 13 hours to 10, including your pre and post checks. That means 1/3 of the fleet then went offline.
I understood why they did that.
Oh, yeah. There's lots of accidents.
There's a reason for doing it, but you have to work around it and be aware of the law of unintended consequences. No matter how much people want to repeal that law, it's about as much of a part of the universe as the law of gravity. Okay.
Mm. Yeah. I'm just saying that we had that crunch come in. So I was working at Penske, and I'm going to be working for them in 2 weeks' time again. And we just critical shortage of drivers. And they were offering truck drivers a year's bonus to sign up with them. Year's salary.
Yeah.
Then.
Now we're having to try and find all these people. You need to make sure and they have to go through trucking driving school. Because you can't just get someone who's never driven a truck before and expect them to drive a truck. Even if they're a good driver, they need to go through and you need to learn how to use a truck. You don't have a rear view mirror in a truck. Okay. Mm-hmm. You have to learn to use your side mirrors. You have to learn to use to see the size of the truck and such. Mm-hmm. There's a reason there you have to go to trucking school. Mm-hmm. So you have to so it's going to take a little time, but it could have been encouraged. If we're they're talking about free community college. If you're gonna give out free education, which I think is garbage anyway, but if you had to give that out, why not give out free trucking school?
Well, the good news on free trucking school is that almost every truck company will pay you as long as you work for them for a certain amount of years. It happened with a friend of mine. So the trucking school, if you sign on to want to be a truck driver, you don't have to pay for that. It's great. You get to learn how to do it, and you got a job coming out of the gate.
Yeah. There are jobs out there if people want them. The key is that you want to find a job that other people don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
For example, there are lots of jobs for people who remove asbestos. Asbestos and mold remediation are a big field. Also, lead remediation.
Mm.
You need some training to do it, but it's similar to a construction job. It's just that a construction job where you have to wear fancy clothing. You have to wear like the bodysuit and the respirator and all that good stuff. It's not super complicated, but you just need to understand a few elements of it, and then you can get a job working at a contractor removing asbestos. There's a lot of demand for this. So, same with a number of skilled trades.
Yeah. I'm skilled labor, as I like to point out to my friends. And what my problem is, I have a very specialized skill, so it's not always in demand. To say if I were a freight forwarder or if I were a dispatcher, but when it comes up, like I got this job pretty quickly, because there's very few people qualified to do it.
Ornamental plasterer? No, seriously. I met two guys that were Brits that were in the United States for a year or two or three, and they were brought over as ornamental plasterers, and they just kept working and working and working, and I don't think they ever left.
Mm-hmm.
They put molding up, plaster molding on top of plaster walls, and they just do all kinds of ornamental plaster work, and those are the only two guys I ever met that did that.
Yeah, I'm what's called a load planner. So I figure out the loads on what's going on in the truck trailer. I figure out the best way to move it from place to place and order and stuff goes on it. And I remember when I was working at my first company, they used to say we weren't all allowed to drive in a car together because if we got killed, our company would shut down. Entire grocery company would shut down for days. I'm like, there's a few people know, but yeah, you would have to be basically going to you'd be like asking the guys in other provinces to do our jobs.
You're like a load master? Is that what you're talking about? Like,
yeah, so yeah, we call load planning. Maybe load master might be good. We figure out what's in the truck, what order it goes in, how much can fit, and staying constraints. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So did you ever do any hazmat work, like with the hazardous materials table, or scheduling like OR&D products?
Yeah, I guess maybe a little bit. There was because I was working for Toyota for a couple of years. We definitely did have one or two trucks that was basically already figured out plan. That never changed.
Yeah, that gets a bit complicated. ORMD is the older style logo. Other regulated material subpart D. The newer style one is like a hazmat diamond, but it has the top and bottom triangles shaded black. So it has the top and bottom are black, and there's and the middle of the section is white. that's the limited quantity logo, which you'll see if you order something from Amazon, like aerosol cans or something like that. It means it's below the limit that requires you to put placards on the outside, but it's still a hazardous material.
Let me. I knew a guy who apparently had retired from the military, and he got a job driving nitroglycerin in a tanker. But it was diluted. Is there any true possibility that was true? Is that how you transport nitroglycerin?
Well, yeah, I would have to look at the hazardous materials table, or something like that. But you can travel with explosives and other really nasty materials. There's not a lot that is specific that you can't move. You just have to be a lot more cautious about it. I took some courses on hazmat shipping, even though I don't do too much hazmat shipping myself. I wanted to know so I could advise laboratories on it. I kind of act like an in-house consultant for other people in my institution. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can actually ship. Like it would be a desensitized explosive, basically. I mean, you can ship dynamite, and that's desensitized. And that's desensitized nitroglycerin in its original form. Nowadays, no one uses dynamite proper. They use something that has similar properties to dynamite, just because it's a pretty nasty material, and you don't want the nitroglycerin getting out and becoming sensitized again. That's the kind of trigger warning I talk about. You don't want to trigger the explosives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as we said, we're approaching that kind of logistical collapse. So, my solution right now is just buy a freezer, and I'm going to stock up on meats because I figured that's going to get really expensive around Christmas time. But I can say one thing. When I was interviewing for my job, they mentioned how truck drivers from Canada are reluctant to cross the U.S. border right now, and that they've had to ship a lot of the manufacturing base back into Canada because they can't get it shipped cross border.
Oh, by the way, here I'm looking at it here. I got an entry here for nitroglycerin mixture, desensitized, liquid, flammable, not otherwise specified, with not more than 30% nitroglycerin. That's that's a. There's also another one for desensitized with more than 1% and less than 5% nitroglycerin in alcohol. And those are both shippable.
Okay. Yeah, I figured there would have to be some way to make it more stabilized than so it could go down the bumpy roads without exploding every week, because I'm sure we would hear about that.
Yeah, there's actually apps that you can get. That will let you get some interesting safety information. They have an app that you can get for free that has the emergency response guide. If you ever wondered, like, what is that truck ahead of me carrying? It's just actually, if you have kids who are, a little bit older or whatever, or grandkids or what have you, and who have a little bit of a science nature, you can have them look up the vehicles that go around or train cars that go by, because they will all have a diamond with a UN number, and you can look up the UN number, and then it'll tell you what would happen if it goes if there's a train accident or whatever. So I know one guy who used to have his kids do that while as a way to keep them occupied in the back of the car. But there's also there's like an app that will let you, it's free, that has pathogen safety data sheets. It has if you want to look up how to kill off Ebola, there's an app for that.
Well, thank God someone's created that one, because that's been one of my number one priorities ever since. Like Chris Christie had to lock all those people up in their quarantines back in 2014 or 2015 when there was the Ebola scare.
I actually planned for how to deal with Ebola. Because I knew that I didn't really have what I needed to deal with it. I had kind of an ersatz plan. Since I was the only one trained to wear like a hazmat suit, I was going to wear the hazmat suit when I cleaned up the area. And before I got out of the hazmat suit, I would have people wearing like a lesser hazmat suit spray me down with bleach, head to toe, before I even take the suit off, just to decontaminate it, and then pack up everything and send it off for incineration.
Yeah.
But I have some disinfectant I keep around that's rated to kill Ebola, just in case.
Just in case, good.
It's not actually that bad to kill, not actually that hard to kill compared to some other bugs. Like anthrax is way harder to kill than Ebola, and COVID is like a complete lightweight. Wuhan coronavirus is easily killed with you could kill it with a bottle of good vodka or a Bacardi 151. Though I prefer to kill the bottle of Bacardi 151 instead.
Yeah.
Well, that explains why I haven't gotten sick.
Just for reference, great YouTube overlords, none of us are doctors here. None of this is medical advice. All hail Fauci, our one true God. Yeah, what the whole YouTube cancellation stuff over this is pretty silly. But
yeah,
I don't want your channel getting taken down.
Oh no, we're like 50 people. It's not that big a deal. Though on my other channel, as a friend pointed out to me, Dave, did you notice that your one video has 1,500 views? I'm like, you're kidding, because normally that other channel has like 25 views amongst a small group of friends. But this thing's one video on Chuck Norris has been exploding. I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
It's Chuck Norris.
Yeah, that seems to be the answer. We did my friends and I did a show, top 5 movies that are Chuck Norris movies that are not Delta Force.
I might have to check that out.
You mean where he stars in them or he co-stars in them?
Yeah, like vehicles. So most people choose, like, especially Chuck Norris, since he pretty much, except for his very early work, he's the star in, right? But in our this show we do is like we take an actor who's known for one particular role or franchise, and then talk about the other movies that you might not know of, and to encourage people to go and watch like the rest of the work. So we just did Sam Neill, for example, and the franchise we blocked on that was Jurassic Park.
Gotcha.
And another one we did was top 5 like Charles Bronson movies that aren't the Death Wish series.
Did you have, I'm guessing that would include Once Upon a Time in the West?
I don't think anyone chose that particular one. That was pretty early. I think that was like our second episode, so it was just me and my one friend. We now have 2 co-hosts regularly who come in, so I don't think I must admit, I haven't seen that. I saw a lot of his other movies over the 2 weeks we studied.
It's one of the best of the Sergio Leone, like spaghetti westerns.
Oh, that's it. I couldn't find it. That was my problem. I wanted to, and I remember it because I watched the trailer and I'm like, this looks really good. And then, you just couldn't get a copy.
It's a really really good movie. It's up there. You could do a thing of top westerns that don't feature Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, that would be something. I know I'm looking at doing one that was like because we did some John Carpenter movies a while back, and I was like thinking top 5 Kurt Russell movies that are not made by John Carpenter.
Since I'm a geek, one of mine I would think of would be Stargate.
Yep, that's certainly one of them. What is it? Overboard.
Huh. Now,
Might
one of my good friends at work, really likes Nicolas Cage movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think her husband sometimes must get jealous of her movie crush on Nicolas Cage.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of funny. Whenever I want to divert a conversation with her, I could just bring up a Nicolas Cage movie. So
yeah. No, definitely one movie that I'm like pretty sure only I and a select member of friends have seen is a movie called The Art of the Steal. And it has Terrence Stamp and Matt Dillon and a couple other people. It's this like one of those movies that gets made in Canada for the tax credit. It showed up in a theatrical release for like 1 week, and I just happened to be lucky enough because there was a time in my life every week I would just go see a movie, come just to get that out of the house kind of thing. And I went and saw this movie, and it's like the best one I've ever seen of his.
What's it about?
It's about this gang of like con artists who get together. They're 2 brothers, and at the beginning, Kurt Russell's character gets left behind by his brother and sold out by his brother, and spends 15 years in a Polish prison. And later, he comes. He's making his way in the world, and suddenly someone comes along and. Long story short, he runs into his brother, gets the team back together, and pulls off an amazing con mission. And then it's like this whole like who's conning who kind of movie where these thieves are all lying, and it's fascinating. And watching it like 2 or 3 times just to get all the references to figure out what's going on, because they kind of like there's a con within I don't want to spoil it, but it's great.
Yeah, Canada is a big film making place nowadays. There was a joke on the TV show Stargate SG-1 that all of the planets have a resemblance to British Columbia.
Yeah,
because it's like the entire galaxy is filled with pine trees. So
yeah.
I heard that in Toronto they were doing a movie, and they wanted it to be a gritty city scene, and so they put graffiti on all the buildings that they were filming, and they had difficulty because every day they'd come into work, all the graffiti would have been cleaned off by the city overnight.
Yeah, that was a
that is that's not a situation you have to worry about not in Chicago.
Yeah,
or
that was for the TV series Night Heat, which was like an American series. It was like the first big American series that was filmed in Canada, but made generic enough that would appeal to American audiences. And yeah, and they constantly complained about that being a problem.
Yeah, it's yeah. I wouldn't want to complain too much about it because it's nice having a city government that actually is somewhat effective at its job, as opposed to what I have. I love Chicago in the sense of what's available for me to go visit. I could go to restaurants from all over the world, see all these cool museums, wonder the really awesome skyline, etc., etc. I like the public transit and all that. But it's run by a bunch of crooks.
Mm-hmm.
At best. Sometimes you'll get people who aren't crooks who are just idiots.
Yeah.
There are all the honest and competent politicians in Chicago either leave or end up dead.
And the corrupt ones just end up in prison.
Or maybe.
Only the incompetent corrupt ones.
I don't know. There seems to be I think if you look at it, most of the majority of the governors the last 30 years have, I think, and it's like a 2/3 majority have ended up in prison.
Yeah. That's the thing. The ones who don't go to prison are the ones who are good at covering it up.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Jesse White. Jesse White will never fail to be reelected. Mm-hmm. He has he's so popular that I went to a Republican convention and the Republican candidate for the Secretary of State was saying good things about him. Because you can't not say good things about this guy because he's made he actually made getting a driver's license fairly tolerable.
Mm.
And for that, it doesn't matter if he's like taking money to spend on hookers and blow. He is not going to lose his office because he's good at what he does. And yeah, that's he is like just not. He's been unaffected by scandals from multiple different governors, and just kind of keeps on doing what he does. And he's going to have that job because no one's going to be able to unseat him. I always vote for the Republican, not because I'm really upset with Jesse White, but mostly because out of pity for the guy who has to run up against him.
Yeah,
because he's one of the few politicians who's actually legit popular in Illinois. So,
yeah. So how are things in the Windy City these days with the thing that shot the Bud Light, as some people like to call it?
Well, there's it's kind of funny. There's definitely a lot more of a sense of people being willing to mask up in Chicago.
Mm.
You were asking me about, you're not asking about crime. You're asking about disease preparedness kind of stuff.
I mean, to me, I'm just wondering, how are people acting? I had one friend on Twitter who, and she was like, when Chicago, she lives there, and she walked. I remember when she was so happy when they told her she didn't have to wear the mask anymore, and now she's miserable because they're making people wear masks again.
Yeah, I understand that completely. I wear the mask as little as possible. I went shopping earlier this week, and I did not wear a mask when I went inside. I had the mask available. If someone had asked, I would put it on.
Mm.
But no one asked me. I went through the entire store. Everyone else was wearing a mask, but I wasn't.
Mm.
And no one asked me because I think people tend to be more scared of asking someone, a stranger, a question in Chicago rather than COVID. Because there's a lot of crazy people in Chicago. And yeah, everyone tends to look away and avoid the crazy person ranting about random things until they absolutely can't avoid it any longer.
That's a problem that I have, actually. Since they've gone to earbuds, I don't know who's psychotic or not, because you see them walking down the street gesticulating and talking out loud, and it used to be a sign in the old days, but now they're just on cell phones.
Oh yeah, they have their cell phone on speakerphone, and or yeah, earbuds or whatever, and hey, they're just talking on that.
Yeah.
That was a cool.
Yeah. The crazy people tend to be a bit more obvious here. Like, I had a guy who was okay. Everyone here has seen Doctor Strangelove, right?
Of course.
General Ripper there. You're basically imagine like the black racist version of that. He was literally saying that the white man was corrupting his seed, and that that all crimes were actually committed by half-breed warlocks.
Okay.
And he was ranting at this while wearing a blazer and suit shorts.
Mm-hmm.
And just he ranted nonstop for the entire time there. That one I definitely was trying to keep a low profile because I think that guy literally believed the white man was the devil, and that all evil in the world is because of the white man. Now, I've also run into people who believe that white men are the result of a mad scientist. If you've ever had a conversation with a member of the Nation of Islam,
No.
it's very surreal because they have, and I like to point this out to people, bigotry is not the same as hatred.
Right.
This guy was talking very calmly and not angrily or condescendingly or whatever. He was being very polite and talking with me and saying that that I was the result of a mad science experiment, that I had been like genetically modified by Dr. Yakub to, my species has been modified to be able to live in the north, but we're a result of a mad scientist.
Okay. I've never heard that was the problem with the Nation of Islam.
The Nation of Islam, you cannot actually go into their sanctuary if you are Caucasian.
Even if I was a practicing Muslim.
The Nation of Islam is not Muslim.
Huh.
In any way, sense of the word.
Okay.
One thing that all forms of Islam are pretty straightforward on is that they are open to all races.
Yeah, it's a religion.
It's a religion. You can like if someone who is Caucasian or black or Asian or whatever goes, they could even sign up for ISIS, and if you're willing to pledge to them, they'll accept you because they don't have any kind of racial ideology with it. It's a religion, and whether or not the different views either believe that they're the supreme religion that needs to conquer all the rest, or they think they're just one other religion. But generally, they want you in. Nation of Islam is not like that. They are different. They don't really view Muhammad as the greatest prophet. They view their founder, like Fard Muhammad, as the greatest prophet. I mean, they have about the same relation to Islam as Jehovah's Witnesses do to Christianity.
Oh, okay.
They're like, yeah, if they went over and tried preaching their stuff in land with Saudi Arabia or Iran or Afghanistan, they would be killed for heresy.
Yeah,
they're not actually actual Muslims.
Okay.
Wasn't it Malcolm X that actually went to the Middle East and came back and said, you guys aren't really practicing Islam?
Yeah.
And that's why that's why one of their guys shot him.
Yeah.
Is because he was like, hey, I kind of like Islam better than this, and I think it kind of makes sense. Islam has had a lot of. I do not. I obviously I'm a Christian. I'm not a Muslim, but I've read a lot about Islam. It's a lot more well developed than like the half baked stuff that you get out of the Nation of Islam. Okay, the Nation of Islam literally has like, mother wheels, like UFOs flying in orbit, where like Fard Muhammad or something like that has traveled up there. The hilarious thing is they've actually partnered with Scientology. Okay. Scientology, which is like super white bread, but they both have that whole science fiction element. It's just that, in one case it's like, Space Brothers in Mother Wheels or whatever, or trying to free your inner Thetan and from all that stuff in Scientology.
Where do the lizards come in? I want to know which one, or do they both? Do they see
Neither of them actually are really into lizard people.
Oh,
I gotta get you. I should get you. I need to get my friend Silence, the one who lives near the Bridge of No Return. Get him on here because he knows all about like random crazy conspiracies and such. But that's like more like just conspiracy.
I definitely never heard about Nation of Islam conspiracy theory. I just thought they were just like half-baked Muslims.
No, they have a lot of really crazy things. Like now, from what I understand, like David Icke, I think is the name.
He's a reptoid guy.
Yeah, the reptoid guy. Now my friend again, he's interested in it because he's just kind of curious about it. He doesn't actually believe any of this stuff. He's more interested in it, and like he'd rather like to make write fictional stories where this kind of stuff is true, kind of thing. So, secret histories of the world, the legacy of Atlantis, the Knights Templar, that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are the people who talk about the reptilians. The Nation of Islam tends to be more like Space Brothers and like secret histories. They also have a good amount of Afrocentrism.
Yeah,
they believe that like all the important people of history were actually black.
Mm-hmm.
So,
this is a semi-serious question. How do they tell that you're white or black and non-black? Do they use the brown paper bag? Is that how they do that? Is that the wrong thing to say? Will we be canceled for that?
Well, that is a good question. I think honestly, I think I might, if I ever run into one, I would ask, like, what is your definition? Like, what is your definition of black? Is it? I've known people who were like multiracial, who are half black, half white, and who looked like somewhat tan, Caucasian. Or I've seen people who looked, much more dark. That's just, how the vagaries of genetics work. I would kind of be curious, like how do they go with the one drop rule or something like that? I mean, it's a good question. Or do they use Ancestry.com?
I just remember that on Oprah she was talking about racism and how you tell and all this other stuff. And she had a woman in the audience who looked like she was 65 years old, good looking, long blonde hair, and she said that but she had black facial features and moderate, sort of medium to light skin. And she said, "I'm black. I'm 100% black, and this is real hair color. This is my real hair color." And how do you? I just don't understand this whole racism thing. How do you determine who deserves what race classification if there's so much crossover? I
mean, there are some biochemical markers. I mean, race does actually exist.
Right.
There are certain, like, if you are black or you are white and you go to a doctor, and they will use, you will have more likely to have different types of high blood pressure, and you might get different medications based on your race, because those are more likely to help you because you'll have a different type of high blood pressure. It's not it's literally that if they gave you the one that the other race would get, it would actually, make you more, it would be more likely to fail.
Well, you might know my opinion on race, but I really would seriously like to know how many, from a genetic perspective, how many races are there, and are there any pure races, and where would they be found? I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm curious.
Well, generally, when you look at racial groups, it tends to focus more on a racial ethnic group and look for common genetic markers.
Mm-hmm.
And the only ones you're going to really see that are going to be closer to pure are going to be more groups that have strong tendencies for in-group mating. For example, the Amish, Hutterites, Mennonites,
Roma.
Roma, and to a lesser extent, Ashkenazi Jews.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why it's much more common for Jewish people to get Tay-Sachs disease. It's a very devastating disease. If you're just a carrier, it's not really a problem. But if you get a gene from both of your parents, you're not going to make it past 4. So there's no cure outside of gene therapy, and that we don't have the gene therapy mature yet.
But Han Chinese is a pure race, right?
I'm not sure about I mean, that's not something that people really consider. Is that that
China it is, right? I don't know.
The Chinese certainly think so, but not. I don't think it's actually
that was a sarcastic question on my part.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not. I sometimes miss sarcasm.
Yeah.
But yeah, according to the Chinese, it's a pure race, and I would imagine they believe it's a superior race, and they would probably point to a lot of the same studies that a lot of white supremacist people do, which actually shows that like the highest test scores are from for people of Asian race. That they tend to have the highest tendency for IQ scores and such. So saying that, I'd imagine there is a pretty strong amount of racial supremacy in China, and
or much of Asia. Actually, Japan's pretty bad for it too. I love all these people. Like, white people can't be victims of racism. I'm like, have you never met a Japanese or Chinese person? Because if you should, because a lot of them are going to treat you pretty badly, and they'll be racist to white people.
Well, I mean, it's like, could you imagine if even after 9/11, if the U.S. had done half of the stuff that in Afghanistan or wherever that China has been doing with the Uyghurs?
Yeah,
they are basically trying to de-Islamize them. They're fighting a war against Islam in that case. They're also trying to ethnically cleanse them by destroying their culture.
Right.
So that is just what they are doing. It's if we were to if anyone had even proposed it would have been viewed as as absolute insanity.
Right.
So.
And it kind of reminds me of getting back to something we were talking earlier about COVID mandates. I'm looking at these people, these bureaucrats in our health departments and our politicians who are trying to drive these things against the hardliners. And I'm like, guys, you look at what the Chinese are doing to the Muslims. Are you willing to do that against these COVID holdouts? Because we'll see, right? But I'm like, I think a lot of these guys have not clued in that you will have to, unless you're going to hold people down and do that. These people who are not going to get the shot are not going to get the shot. Christians have, from the beginning of history, have examples of being fed to the lions and not keeping with their faith. Like, this is not going to work the way it's going to work out for you. And that's why, 1 in every 4 flights right now is currently canceled.
Well, I know a lot of people who are opposed to the mandate and who would not fit the typical profile of that they have. There's lots of black people in Chicago who do not want to get the government mandated vaccine.
But 60% of the teachers in New York do not have the vaccine.
How many?
60%
in New York City.
But
and here's the thing: I can't blame them, because the history of the federal government giving stuff to black people has not exactly been good.
No, or even big corporations. Look at Johnson & Johnson, the manufacturer of one of the vaccines. They just got fined $3.5 billion, billion with a B, for deliberately marketing a baby powder to black people that they knew was carcinogenic back in the 1980s. And they had continued doing this into the 2000s.
Yes. It all goes back to Libby, Montana. Have you ever heard of what happened at Libby, Montana?
You might have to describe the event.
Libby, Montana was a mine for talcum, like talc, the mineral talc. And, talc will come as like this very, very soft mineral that you can make into talcum powder. Mm. The problem was, you can also get vermiculite from there and other things from, Libby. I think vermiculite was one of the bigger things that they would get from Libby. But like, what you ended up happening is a lot of that stuff ended up contaminated with asbestos. Mm-hmm. And there's been lots of cases where people have been trying to, people have been finding asbestos in some of these products that snuck in. And now I might be wrong on this, and it might have been something different in the talcum powder. But mineral dusts can be a bit. I mean, I would imagine that if you spread this stuff on your body, you'd probably be fine. But given how easily the stuff gets into the air, I can understand why they ended up with such a huge lawsuit.
Yeah. Hey, look, they just say the vaccines are perfectly safe, except for the fact we just discovered that Moderna was giving 1 in 5,000 in Ontario is the official reason why we stopped giving it to 20-year-old boys. 1 in 5,000 were getting myocarditis, permanent heart damage.
The way they sold the vaccine was absolute garbage. Mm-hmm. I could use more colorful language, but I'm trying.
We only got the one F-bomb this time. Like
Venom. We have no vaccine is without side effects.
Right.
No vaccine is perfectly safe. And I mean, if you go and you get a flu shot, they're going to give you a vaccine information statement, and this is a thing given by the CDC, and it will list the side effects of the vaccine. That is the CDC statement, and this is endorsed by CDC and FDA. This is going to say the side effects of a vaccine. And when people tried to say that this was perfectly safe, it was just making me outraged, because everyone knows that drugs have side effects. Who has seen a drug commercial? They have to spend like half the commercial doing like the equivalent of fine print, so they can do like, after they go, this may cause this, may cause you to frolic with wombats. Okay, all this little fine print on there. Drugs have side effects. It's kind of hard to fit that into an advertisement, so they have that rambling section there. Now, if you have a vaccine, you're going to always have some of these side effects, just because people are different and they respond to things differently. And the first case that people talk about in terms of vaccine mandates was actually because of an atypical reaction to a vaccine. The reason why I think Henrik or Hennig Jacobson didn't want to get the vaccine back, the smallpox vaccine, was because he had a really bad reaction last time he got it. And they weren't considering the fact that he'd already gotten the vaccine. Mm-hmm. The only reason he ended up, they ended up saying, okay, we'll let this stand, was because the vaccine because it was smallpox, which is absolutely devastating.
Right.
And the only consequences was the guy had to pay $5, which would be about the equivalent of like $140 or $150.
Something like that today.
Now, I'm actually reading this really fascinating article on this, where it took this apart. It was a law review article from one of the people who was, I think, from one of the people from the LoC conspiracy. Mm. And yeah, I'll post it when you post it on Ricochet. I'll post a link to that. I'm hoping to do a quote of the day off of it. But the infamous decision Buck versus Bell, I don't know if you've ever heard of that. That's the one where it was like Oliver Wendell Holmes said 3 generations of imbeciles is enough, and said that it's okay to sterilize people.
But she was a deuceable and of normal intellect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, they had this sterilization program was justified under this, which completely reread the idea of reread the entire idea of the Fredrickson case, because the Fredrickson case specifically said there was no right to force someone to get a vaccine. You could only do this reasonably trivial penalty. And Oliver Wendell Holmes basically said, well, since we can throw people in jail and we can draft people where they will risk getting shot, then we have the ability to do basically whatever we want to them.
Mm-hmm.
The craziest thing about this is Buck versus Bell was never overruled. It's still on the books as case law.
Yeah.
Which is kind of disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, again.
But I got some good news on that front. Apparently, a certain act passed by young Congressman Schumer is coming back as the Religious Freedom and Restoration Act. It's going to save a lot of Americans, because that's basically you have very broad interpretations of what considers a religious exemption, and the courts seem to be more and more in the United States are just basically saying you have to give them a religious exemption, and you can't really inquire into why it is the religious exemption, and this includes atheists. You have a strong moral reason why, and you can't judge people for that. And it's I've been watching a lot of these lawyer YouTube shows, and they're going into that. So it does seem to be that because of this act, a lot of people will be able to get religious exemptions. And as people keep pointing out, the OSHA rules, and I think you were one of the people who are pointing out, the OSHA rules have yet to be even enforced. It's all like employers.
It's not even that. It's like OSHA. I read this in the Federalist, and it made my jaw drop. OSHA hasn't even started the rulemaking process.
Right.
There's this whole process you go through with where you propose a standard, and then it goes through a comment period, and then it can be modified and such. And then after it's established, and there's often litigation for a while. This is gone through a number of cases, and finally, there's an opportunity where the proposed standard can actually be voted down by Congress. Okay, this has not even started.
Yeah,
and it's not. It can't. They're going to have to do more than one standard, because, as I said, OSHA only had, like, most of OSHA standards are under 1910. 29 CFR 1910. Then there's also the construction standards, which are completely separate under 1924. And then 29 CFR 1924. And then there's another one for like longshoring operations, taking stuff off of ships. It's been in the news recently.
Oh yeah.
And then there's MSHA, the Mine Safety and Health Administration. They would have to create their own standard. And then you have all the state agencies. State agencies could create their own standards if OSHA does not. Mm-hmm. So Cal OSHA could basically be like, you need to get a vaccine every, you need to be, get a vaccine every week and have like and have a mask super glued to your face, and they would have that separate from everybody else. What's really bugging me is that a lot of these companies, instead of trying to say, we'll wait for the standard, are basically jumping at the chance to apply this to people.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe they think they will reduce absenteeism.
There's a couple different things there. One, as I said earlier, they just didn't think they'd get this much resistance because they're really clueless. Another one is it does sound like Biden and others have been basically calling, the Democrat government has been calling these companies up, and like, say in the case of Southwest, who originally was trying to avoid doing that, and now apparently their boards are being called by like the president of the United States saying, hey, we need you to really enforce this. So there's a lot of like the guys going for these, and a lot of the lawyers who are advising them wrongly. And they're going forward with these things. But I just think they just didn't understand they would get like 25% of their people saying no.
Well,
and it's costing them.
But why are they demanding it in the first place? I mean, the people say no for a number of reasons, like three good reasons off the top of my head. But what are the good reasons for the vaccine mandate? Really, I mean, I thought the vaccine actually bred a specific particular variant, or
that really isn't accurate. From all my understanding of how viruses work, like the Delta variant's thing is it's more infectious, so it's not just
lethal.
Well, yeah, that's the way viruses normally evolve.
Yeah.
Now
so it's not killing as many people, but more people are getting sick.
So because the Delta variant is more infectious, it doesn't matter. It would probably predominate even if no one had any immune response to the disease whatsoever, or if no one was received vaccine. What you're thinking of is like an antibiotic resistant effect, like against an antiviral.
Pressure is what they call it.
What?
What they call it is evolutionary pressure.
Yeah, like you can, if you, like most of the time when you have a evolutionary modification to a cell to make it, like a pathogen, it tends to break something. It generally doesn't make it more effective outside of the evolutionary pressure. Well, that's most of the things that are antibiotic resistant bacteria, it involves breaking something or adding an additional layer of complexity to the cell. And the antibiotic resistant mutation will be outcompeted by the wild type, which means the normal version, the non-variant type, that one's going to outcompete it because evolution normally proceeds by breaking something. Like that's how, if you look at all the antibiotic resistance, it's usually like something is broken or whatever, and you need to have the antibiotic present in order to selectively grow an antibiotic resistant mutation. Otherwise, it's going to get outcompeted by the wild type version. Okay, so the reason why I don't think the vaccine is the case is because like the variants we're seeing more commonly are actually just more virulent in general.
Yeah.
So they're not actually. So even if there was no response, their evolutionary pressure, they would still be spreading very wildly because they're more evolutionarily successful. It's their success is independent of having the vaccine or not. And also, these viruses have a very high mutation rate.
Right.
So they're going to be going through. It's not as high as like something like the AIDS virus. The AIDS virus basically makes every possible single point mutation inside of a person who has AIDS. They will have a virus with every possible single point mutation because the mutation rate is that high that and there's so many viruses inside of them that they will literally have every possible mutation, which is why AIDS is where you go to have a vaccine against AIDS. It'd be impossible. It changes so much. But
Fauci said we would get a vaccine to AIDS, didn't he?
have you ever read my post on Fauci?
No, not yet.
Take a look at it because I go through my time from the pandemic and I'm thinking this guy is going to be some sharp guy who knows what he's talking about. And, he's a professional. He's from the NIH, so these guys know what they're doing. And then it just kept on going, and he kept on saying things that were wrong and doing horrible messaging. Mm-hmm. If you have to change your position on something, you need to explain it. Right. You can't just change your position like we were always at war with East Asia. Okay.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't work. People will remember things like this. People remember 15 days to flatten the curve. People remember.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be wearing a mask. No, wait. No. You got to wear a mask everywhere.
Yep.
And I kept on going, especially after you had people said like you can't have a funeral. You can't have a funeral for your dad, but George Floyd could have huge crowds at his funeral.
Right.
And all the public health people were unable to condemn it, unable to even say that if you're going to do this, you're taking a big risk. Please don't do this. Even if they don't try to stop it, just condemning it. No, they couldn't do that. They couldn't even say that because the virus apparently can tell if you're woke or not. It's like it can apparently tell if you're at Obama's party or not. Remember that? His birthday party where everyone was, all the important people were maskless and while all the servants were wearing masks.
Yep.
And now we find out that he was going around his own rules, the NIH's own rules on the gain of function research. He went around his own system, ended up funding something.
Fauci wrote those rules or approved those rules?
They were in the NIH. They were set up by the NIH, so it was the NIH's own rules, not his rules specifically.
Right.
But those rules are designed for researchers and are designed to approve things that have scientific merit, but not things that are just kind of, I want to try this. Things like that have happened at institutions, and there are cases where things have been shut down very quickly because you have institutional biosafety committees and such that will act as a watchdog. If you're concerned about biomedical research and you live near a university, consider becoming a public member on their IBC. Public members must be present for them to make a decision, and we have some kind of anti-establishment people. I'm glad to have them there because I want to have someone willing to watch us mad scientists' backs, so we don't end up like Umbrella Corporation or something like that. Umbrella Corporations are the people, the villains in the Resident Evil movies and video games. If you didn't. Anyway, I wrote a post on Fauci and went through just about how I went from respecting the guy to hating the guy's guts. So,
well, we're getting into an hour and a half here, but I do want to get back to Flicker's original question. Why are the government doing this? And I can tell you two different reasons. One, it reminds me of the old story about Stalin and the carbon tubes. I don't know if Omega's heard of this story. But basically, Stalin is in the Soviet Union and meeting with some of his top scientists. And he goes up to one of the scientists and says, "Hey, is there anything you really need?" And the guy said, "Well, I guess we could use some more carbon tubes." And Stalin turns to one of his flunkies and says, "Take care of it." And the scientist may be thinking that he might need like a dozen tubes or 100 tubes. But when Stalin tells you to take care of something, you redirect to get those scientists carbon tubes. Suddenly, the science houses are filled with carbon tubes. They can't move around because of the number of carbon tubes that are showing up. And much of the way with the government bureaucracy is basically, you tell the bureaucracy they have to do something. They will do everything they can to put as many shots in as many arms as they can, and they will damn the torpedoes, damn the consequences of this. Another is this is a very much a moral panic. Like I remember I was listening to one commentary, and John Horowitz was pointing out that this is a lot of what's going on. It's just like the satanic panic in the 80s, where you can't say no to those. It's pretty preposterous looking back on it. But we had W5 reports, we had media concentration, all convinced that little kids were being attacked by satanic worshipers at daycare centers across America.
Yeah, I think there is some elements of that.
And I think the last one is basically they want the power to stick needles in people's arms to experiment on them. And this is like taking your last real freedom away from you. Some people do want that. And that's more the Bill Gates of the world who have their decisions, who really think they can experiment on and make better people.
I just to make a point about that, I always make sure I boot up Linux after each time I got a vaccine shot. I made sure I booted up in Linux and such afterward, because I'm not being controlled by Bill Gates or anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think you're onto something there, and mass vaccination is a valid way to control a pandemic. It's if you had a situation where like there was a biowarfare attack, we have like trucks full of vaccines, or we used to. I think the stuff was not maintained under the Obama administration, but we had to beef it back up to capacity. But anyway, we had a stockpile of stuff to rush out there and get mass vaccination to people for a dangerous disease. That's part of the normal process of how you respond. The problem we have here is there is this assumption, and it's like this belief that's very hard to shake, that COVID is way, way more dangerous than it actually is. And it can be pretty dangerous, but it's much closer to influenza, and people don't panic over influenza. We don't shut down the country over influenza. I think what we're going to end up with is people will get a COVID shot if they need it, just like they get a flu shot. And that's what I did this year. I got my COVID booster and I got my flu shot. And I think that's probably what we're going to end up with. But
yeah,
it's not like something that requires you like getting people fired. And more to the point, they're talking about it in groups that don't have a high risk of it. There are probably more risks from an exposure. I mean, from what I've been reading in the literature, for people who are younger, So why are we forcing them to get it?
Yeah.
I mean, if people want to get it or they have a condition, I'm considerably overweight. I'm working on changing that, but that's one. And I also work in a healthcare environment because it's university health system and such. So I have two things that mean I'm more likely to catch COVID than the average bear. So that's one of the reasons why I got a booster. I encourage people who are in risk groups to get it. But it's good. Everyone is assumed to be at risk of this, and we've pumped up the idea of the risk to a huge level. Now, on the other side of this, beyond the Stalin's tubes example, this gives people a way to do something about it. And politicians don't want to be seen as not doing anything, even if they can't do anything about it, which is why we still have mask mandates when they don't do very much.
And social distancing is based on a theory that doesn't even apply anymore. We now know the virus is airborne and is not spread by people's accidental spit.
Well, I would hold off on that. It just because something is airborne does not mean it's, if someone is if thinks they have COVID and are going to a doctor, they should definitely be wearing a mask. If you're worried that you're going to be coughing, you might not be able to cover your mouth in time and such. I mean, it's like when I thought I had the flu, I wore a mask, and it was kind of funny. I wore a mask. Everyone was wanting me to take it off. This was back. I wanted to go to a doctor's office, and I was feeling sick, and I wore a mask because I didn't want to spread it to anybody else. And everyone is like panicking over me wearing a mask. It's just kind of funny to think about how it is now. But, it's not, I mean, the idea of a mask is not that it's always a bad idea. It's that the universal masking is just using this idea of, we have all these people wearing like a rag over their face or whatever, and it's not actually that effective. And when you're dealing with it outside, we've known since early on that the virus is, if you're out on a sunny day, that virus is going to be dead in the air in like 5 minutes or less.
Yeah,
the UV light is just going to cook it. So it's silly. The ABSA keynote, that American Biological Safety Association, they had a conference. Their keynote speaker talked about how COVID is airborne, Wuhan coronavirus is airborne, and that the best interventions they have found were putting in filtration in buildings and increasing the amount of fresh air.
Yeah.
So instead of keeping people caught, cooped up, we should have been encouraging people to go outside and walk around. That also increased the amount of vitamin D they get. And vitamin D is actively being investigated as having some preventative effects. We don't know for certain, but it's one of those things I always tell people. If you're gonna, the worst thing that happens if you take like a normal dose of vitamin D is you'll have strong bones. So I I see no reason, not to, take your vitamin D. I'm part of a study that is looking into that right now.
Can I just ask a quick follow up on filtration? It seems like they say that jet planes have the best filtration system in the world, or one, generally speaking, have very good filtration systems, air filtration systems. And one is, do they get clogged up? And two, do you remember those Democrats that flew, I guess, from Texas to DC or something like that, and 8 out of 12 of them got COVID on that flight? Did they really? Do you really suspect that they got COVID during that flight, or and that the filtration system was bad, or that it was good and they came aboard with it? But especially, how many hours can you run a filter before it gets ineffective?
Okay, you're dealing with a lot of like things in the air here. It's like saying how far can you drive a car on a tank of fuel?
Especially
depends
since
on
I
the
want to wrap
car,
this up in
depends on the
5 minutes.
fuel,
I need to
depends
really
on the
get
size
going.
of the tank. So basically, you've got you want like really good quality filters, and those can clog over time. However, if the filter clogs, it's likely to shut down the system, and it will become more effective as it gets more clogged. But it will also build up the resistance and more likely to start damaging the motor. It's like someone just imagine like those people who triple mask. Imagine wearing more and more layers of masks over your face and trying to breathe through that. Eventually, you're wearing like 16 wool sweaters over your face, and you're trying to breathe through that. Okay, that's what happens when you clog a filter. So but the filters have to be good quality. You want something like you want to go for something like a HEPA filter, the kind they use to deal with nuclear fallout, high efficiency particulate air. It's the gold standard filter, and you want something like that. And I don't know if it had that or not. It might have, but you need something that has a really, really fine capture efficiency, way better than you will get off of your furnace filter. We'll put it that way. So yeah, I can't really give you a solid answer unless I could actually look at what kind of filter they actually have. I mean, we have systems that you can use with pathogens that pull it through a HEPA filter, and they literally just dump the filtered air back into the room. Biosafety cabinets do that all the time. So anyway, it's been awesome talking to you. I'm always up to talk again. We still have not actually talked about nuclear energy, which I could go for an entire hour on nonstop.
If we're doing that, we're going to have to bring in, what's his name, so the two of you can really we'll have to bring in Stad for that one. Then we'll have to do a nuclear panel show with you and Stad. That'd be
actually, yeah. If we could get like some actual nuclear professionals in there, that would be so awesome. I would.
Yeah.
I have a lot of knowledge about the variants of nuclear, but I don't have a lot of practical knowledge of it. So that would be great. But whenever let me know.
Yeah, because if we're doing that, I might bring in a who's not on Ricochet, but he's a former nuclear submarine commander too. So
awesome. Well, I might be able to pull in my father for that if I could finagle it, if it would work. And my father had worked on an aircraft carrier and had 20 years of commercial nuclear power experience.
Okay.
So
there
is not a lack of people who can talk nuclear power. You can see where I got my interest in it from. When I was a kid, I wanted to be like Dad. So I got the stash and
this stream on is what I always like here. So I want to thank you for coming in on the last minute like this and helping us out with this.
I hope this was interesting. I hope it's interesting for the people watching. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask me on Ricochet. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have on this, other than what's my actual name.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming out, and we'll see everyone else in the comments on Ricochet.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.